Hi, my name is Dorian, and this is You, Me, and the Industry. A podcast where I get to hang out with people from the games industry and talk with them about their job, the industry, and a bunch of other stuff. This episode, I am joined by the founder and creative director of Bravewave, Mohammed Taher. Bravewave is a music label that is well known for their work with some of Japan's most legendary video game composers. For this 2-hour-long episode, we dig deeper into what directing an album looks like, the incredible quality standards Mohamed set himself for any album, as well as his newfound interest in investment. We also touch upon his love for coffee, Evanescence, and great album artwork. Here we go. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. With me today is Mohammed Taher, who is the founder and creative director of Bravewave, a record label that focuses on video game soundtracks and their composers. Over there they created the definitive editions of soundtracks like Ninja Gaiden, Shovel Knight, Street Fighter 2, Bloodstained, and most recently Streets of Rage 4. Under the Bravewave label, artists such as Keiji Yamagichi, Sayori Kobayashi, and Takahiro Izutani released their own work. Mohammed, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
How are you doing in these days?
I'm okay. I'm sick of COVID as is everyone else.
Right.
Still waiting for my vaccine, which is hopefully it's going to be sometime next week or the week after. And we're talking in just weird, well, it's not weird, it's just difficult times with everything that's been going on in Palestine and what they've always faced with their oppressors, with the Zionists, and it's been a bit difficult to actually sit down with a game and enjoy, because most of what my mind is occupied with is just reading up on news and just and it's difficult not to, because whether it's Twitter or Instagram, of course I have industry friends, gaming, music industry friends, but I also have a lot of other people, and it's impossible to escape the cycle of news. Not that I want to, but it's worth bearing in mind that if you only follow maybe 2, 3, 4 other people in the gaming industry, your timeline might be relatively easy to get through. But if you're an Arab who just happens to follow a lot of other people, then it is the news of just every day. It is the news of every work conversation, every I have a gathering with my cousins, and that's what we spend some of our time just talking about. So it's something that's occupying a lot of us right now, which is for some people, maybe they're able to play and follow up with the news. But for me, it is kind of easy to just sit down with a show. I was just watching the Unabomber on Netflix, but something that requires me being active and caring, like a game. It's just very difficult for me. But I'm doing my best.
Yeah, totally understandable. It has been an interesting year, to say the least, regarding also games like 6 Days in Fallujah, which I also had an episode about.
Yeah.
But it's troubling. I think also the industry's response about the whole issue, and also more the lack of response, or the silencing of responding is interesting to see. But I'm also sort of torn, because I think it's, on one hand, it's interesting to see that some some of the biggest media companies like IGN try to respond, but also it's sort of torn in between the writing staff and the leadership team.
Yeah, I also think about many of the gaming companies, the big gaming companies, as well as tech companies like Google and Apple, who their employees. They might have a large percentage of employees who support the Palestinian right, but it's not easy to just come out and speak of it publicly or on Twitter. And I assure you that no Palestinian, none of us want anyone getting fired because of a tweet that doesn't make sense, and that's not right. So it's definitely like I don't especially take pride in the fact that Brave Wave, as far as I know, was the first company that wrote a statement or published a statement, because it's easy for us to do it, because I am one of the co-founders, and we can afford to do something like this. Like if pushing out a statement in support of Palestinians and explicitly condemning Zionists and anyone who supports them, me and my team, we can weather any repercussions, whereas maybe other indie companies, like, who knows who they're funding them, and they like, if the cost of publishing a statement is them not getting the funding that they need or whatever else, then that is not easy. So that is why it was extremely easy for me to publish the statement. I wrote it, I sent it to my co-founders Marco and Alex. They just brushed up on my grammar, and it was released in like less than 24 hours, whereas in other companies it's just not easy. But I think the thing that maybe the silver lining here, so the issue is not seeing a lot of support, but the silver lining is that a lot of people in the West who have been exposed to this ridiculously expensive, like trillions dollars worth, the propaganda machine for decades, but especially like since the Iraqi invasion, that, you know, Arab people are bad and Arab people are terrorists, and they just tried their hardest to kind of like just ingrain that thought. And a lot of people are just like, this is not something you can undo with one like revolution that's happening now. But I think a lot of people are realizing that they are not the bad guys. The bad guys are what we've always known them to be, like all these big governments that are conspiring together. It's never any race. It's never just regular people. And I think if you think back to the days of the Iraqi war, when we did not have social media, and the only place that you can read on about news and like war developments, especially about the war, it's just either newspaper, magazines, TV stations. And when you can't escape this cyclone of state-sanctioned media, then it's really difficult to actually see what the truth is. Whereas, especially with what happened last year, I keep thinking of how can I swear on your show?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. I was just gonna say how fucked up it is that the world had to watch George Floyd getting getting murdered by a police officer on TV. And even though all of us have seen that, like we've all seen it, we've all seen the video, when we were waiting for the judge to or the jury to call the verdict, a lot of people, me included, we just did not know where it was leading. Like, is he going to be indicted and just going to jail or not? And the fact that we had this kind of worry, even though everyone had seen him kill George Floyd, just made people just maybe trust each other's more, like trust like the movement of people, instead of just following what the media says, because the media is just who knows what's influencing it, and they definitely can't side with what we as regular people think of as the truth. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement just opened a lot of people's eyes to not just the injustices, but the way that media tries to reframe and retells a story in a way that favors the oppressed. In that case, it was, the police and just the government. So
Mm-hmm.
you have people like us reading Twitter and following up on the developments, and then you see like official responses or like right-wing channels trying to paint George Floyd or the movement as something
Right. Mm-hmm.
evil or bad or whatever. And it just, I think it woke a lot of people, and it just showed all of us the importance of trying to verify stuff by ourselves, or like through a collective effort. It's much better than just following what my country says, or you know, the New York Times or the New Yorker or Washington Post are saying. And this is also happening again now, because I think all of us just learned a lot from the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think Palestinians are also realizing that, you know, when you document everything, when you just upload it and just let people see it, it is changing a lot of people's minds. A lot of people did not know anything about Israel and Palestine. They don't know that this was a stolen land. They don't know that it has always been called Palestine. We actually, like in Kuwait, we don't call it Israel. I've never called it Israel. I think this is my first time talking to someone like from the West and just calling it Israel, because to us it's Palestine, and the forces that are there are just occupiers. And we just say Zionist occupiers, because Israel does not exist. It's not a dispute between two countries. It is it is a country that has always existed, and then settlers came.
More like internal conflicts.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's I think Palestinians, going back to what I was trying to say, Palestinians and just Arab people in general, we're realizing the importance of just sharing information. And the other thing is that just as much as we can, trying to share it in English, because in the past we have always talked about these issues amongst ourselves in Arabic, and like no one is really being educated, or no one, like there is no new information breaking through walls. It's just chatter between us. Whereas especially on Instagram, also on Twitter, but what I try to do is when I quote something that is in Arabic, I try as much as I can to just translate it myself and post it. I try as much as I can to not tweet in Arabic about it. I try to tweet in English, because all my Arab followers, like, they're not gonna learn anything from what I'm gonna be saying. But I think a lot of people who know me, who have known me for years, who are receptive to taking like radically new information, I rather that they like read it from me. And I think just having the chance to change the mindset of just a few people is enough. I think it's I think it's a worthy goal. I am not an activist. I cannot be an activist. I don't even know what it means to be an activist. I just like suddenly I felt like, well, I can't talk about games. I'm just not in the mood. And like I scroll my Twitter timeline, and it's a mix of games and a war, and I just can't bring myself to take any of the gaming news seriously, or the gaming discourse seriously, just because it really does not matter. It just means nothing to me right now. And maybe that's gonna change. Maybe eventually I'm gonna find a balance. I think Rami Ismail, he's really good with that. He is good at threading the needle of how he talks about Palestine, and also how he takes care of himself. And like maybe he's playing a game or something, and he can tweet about that. And I think that is. I hope one day I can reach that just level of separation between an important cause and also like just my mental well-being, because it's challenging. And as someone who's having an easy life in Kuwait, there is just a certain amount of guilt, which maybe certain people felt it last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, when if you're, especially if you're American, not just American, but especially if you're American and you're seeing all the injustice, if you never really kind of like understood the word privilege and what it means before, surely the Black Lives Matter movement kind of gave it just a newer perspective, or just gave you a different angle on how it feels. And I feel like the only way I know how to deal with this guilt is by just doing the bare minimum, which is just sharing all the just harrowing, devastating news. And it's really it's not about spreading negativity. It's just about wanting people to
spread awareness, right?
Yeah, it's just that. I think I already know a few people who kept learning new things in the first few days, and now they're completely changed. And I think that is really good. I mean, it's not like this is my fault or your fault. It's just systems and just propaganda machines for just centuries. And I think it's amazing that people are realizing that the power is with them, and they have the chance to. I mean, the fact that we reversed a narrative that is backed by like all the big settler colonies is outstanding, because you have state-sanctioned media that is unable to suppress just the flood of information and videos and photos that Palestinians and Arab and Western people and just people of all walks of life are sharing. And the fact that even though Instagram / Facebook and Twitter and TikTok are all trying to kind of suppress and distract. And one way that I've seen it personally is that when I type the hashtag free, and I just I type the pound symbol or the hashtag symbol, and then I type FR, it does not give me the correct Free Palestine hashtag. It gives me one with a typo, which is just meant to like
diffuse like the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And like even when I try to like write hashtag Gaza under attack, there's also another typo in it, and that is really infuriating. But there's also this sense of victory that even though they're trying all of this, like it's state-sanctioned media plus these big tech conglomerates that are worth billions and billions of dollars on the stock market, even with all their suppression tools, they just cannot stop this moment of awakening. And I think maybe that's the silver lining in all of it, is that for once Palestinians are, and Arabs to be honest, are feeling that we are heard and we are believed by other people. And that is just that makes me feel good. Like that makes me sleep better at night, that this media war that the US had waged and then exported to Europe is now finally facing resistance, like strong resistance, not from people like me, but like from residents of those countries. And that makes me feel good. That makes me feel like there is actual progress being made about just the Arab identity and the Arab image, and that we're actually just boring people just like any other country. We have good and bad faults, just like every other country and every other nation just have their own share of good and bad people. Like there's nothing different about it.
Yeah, I think it's also very interesting to see, like, I don't know, it's like people, you just mentioned Rami Ismail talk about this, and I had the pleasure having him on the show talking about these issues and how he was like in a constant struggle of like being like tired and also being angry. And it's interesting. It's also kind of really educating, if I can speak for myself, to see people talk about these issues, which I mean seem rather how do I put it, like how rather nebulous for me, like being in the West. Not really be growing up like with these like sensitive topics, and for example like how Arabs are portrayed in movies and in games. It's I like you know to a certain degree that there are stereotypes, but you don't even know like how much of the extent. It's like just like casual casual racism in some sort of sense. It's and you just feel like numb to this. And then he also talked about movies like American Sniper, and I recently rewatched like the first Iron Man movie, and again it's like how the people are portrayed in these movies. It's just like we said, it's a certain type of like shaping the narrative to be a certain type of way, so people don't really consider them as people.
Yeah, and it sucks. Although I have to say that for as much as I might seem like I'm doing, honestly, most what I'm doing is just like, I'm not like excavating some amazing information. I'm just retweeting the things that I think are worth reading from my timeline. Whereas people like Rami, like, he is taking the time, like, to like multiple times just creating threads about like the history of Palestine and the history of like these recent aggressions. And I think what he's doing is honestly more taxing, because when I read something that's just infuriating or just depressing or just makes me feel helpless, I retweet it, and I don't want to say like that's my end with it, but that's maybe more or less that's my end with it. Whereas sitting with it, trying to dissect it into tweets and just write a thread about it, like that is much more mentally taxing, and I really appreciate that Rami is putting the time to do that. I think that's generally my favorite thing about Rami, that if you go back to my Twitter account when like the first like incidents in Sheikh Jarrah were happening, I was extremely angry, extremely vindictive, and I just wanted to just walk and burn all the bridges that I have made with industry folks. Whereas Rami is, I'm sure, also equally angry, but he's just a more diplomatic person, and maybe that's just because of the nature of who he is. Maybe he just knows how to like talk about issues in a diplomatic way, or in a way that's not like no accusations, nothing. It's just about him talking and wanting to like spread awareness. Whereas with me, it's just me walking with just a barrel of oil and a match on the other hand, and just like burning everything on my way. And then I realized, no one is to blame. Like, all of the people who follow me, like no one is to blame. Like, if I want people to actually read what I have to say, I need to be more accommodating to in my tone and in the way that I just spread awareness. And I'm learning a lot from Rami. But because of all of this, it's honestly been a bit difficult to play games. I played a little bit of Mass Effect, but trying to play a game with like tons of items and just inventory management and just all of this is like, I'm realizing that I can't. I played a little bit of the well, not a little bit. I am towards the end of the Witness, the Jonathan Blow game, which I bounced off really hard when it came out, and I always had a negative image about it in my head. But Marco, my co-founder and our mixing engineer at Bravewave, he always told me that I need to give it another chance, that it's one of his favorite games. And I'm near the end. I'm stuck at one puzzle, but the game's just, it's already one of my favorite games. I love it a lot. I finally, I feel like I get it. And actually, just remembered, I am actually playing one game, which is, it's a bit funny to talk about Ultra Street Fighter 4, because this is a PlayStation 3/Xbox 360 game. I think it got released on PlayStation 4, like with all the DLCs and everything. And recently my grandmother died, like in Ramadan, so maybe like 3 weeks ago. And because of her passing away, I got to meet a lot of my cousins who I have a lot of memories with, I grew up with, and we're trying to like revive our gatherings. So we have set up a weekly gathering at my place. And what I realized is that like back then when I used to like meet them a lot and play games with them, like before Brave Wave, like let's say 2012, 13, 11, we used to play Street Fighter 4, and even though right now we have Street Fighter 5, and actually SF5, like it progressed enough that I think if you buy all the DLCs, you're just gonna have a ton of characters. But they don't want to play 5; they only want to play 4. So what I did is I just bought 4 again, and I'm just I'm like training, like just training against the CPU. Just go to the training mode, and it's basically infinite health, and I just get to train a lot. And that's something I haven't been doing for maybe 10 years. Like I've always considered myself a huge fan of Street Fighter. I mean, we also, it was the first soundtrack that we released, Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, right.
But I've always thought that, well, maybe that's it for me and fighting games. I just don't have people to play with, and no one is really interested. And now I see like all my cousins really into Street Fighter 4, and now I'm just training and playing that again. So I think it's relatively easier to play than, say, Mass Effect, because Mass Effect requires a lot of, I want to say, just mental gymnastics. Like you have to think, you have to like
focus.
You really have to focus. You really have to think about like just the lore itself. And every once in a while, when you press start, you're gonna see a ton of new like just lore additions about everything that's been happening in the world, and I think that requires a certain kind of mindset that I'm realizing that I'm not in right now. Whereas with Street Fighter 4, like even if I stop playing Street Fighter for 10 years, I just instinctively remember all the moves, and all I need to do is just relearn just my combos, my methods, and I never really was a professional player. I'm just a huge fan, but really just casual player who likes to play with his cousins. But even then, like playing a game like that where all I need to do is just like press start, go to the command list, and just refresh my memory, that is much easier than playing something involving like Mass Effect, when I'm kind of like in the mood to reading about just this cycle of daily news and books about Palestine and everything. But interesting times to say the least.
Yeah, totally. So maybe to close off this segment, who's your main?
Well, I've always been like Rio, Ken, or Zangief, and I like Zangief because no one likes him. I mean, like from my side of the family, they see him as this big, slow guy that is just, he has moves that are difficult to make, because most of his moves are just throws.
Grabs,
grabs. And in Street Fighter, if you just want to do a regular grab, you just press two buttons. But with Zangief, you have to like actually do like a full circle in the gamepad
motion.
And it's not like a Hadouken where you just like need to do half a circle. With Zangief, you need to do like a full circle, and that just becomes annoying for people to learn, like the people around me. So they try to go for like projectile based fighters, Ryo, Ken, Akuma. But I have changed my character for the first time. I'm playing with Oni, which I honestly have no idea who Oni is. He just looks like Akuma. I think he is Akuma, like maybe
he's like the demon form of Akuma or something.
Yes,
I'm not quite sure.
Yes. I think that's what it is. And he's just a lot more fun to play. He has a lot, just different moves, a different moveset than like Ryo or Ken, or even Akuma himself. Like he has a few new moves and combos, and it's just a lot of fun to play with.
Okay, sure, yeah. And moving on. We talked a lot about different topics here, but I think it's all worthwhile. So I still want to offer you the opportunity, since it is courtesy here, that the guest is allowed to bring a topic to the show. And even though we already spent some time on a different topic, I think it is still only fair to offer you this chance again. Do you have a topic prepared for us to talk about?
Yes, I want to talk about investing in the stock market. And I just want to say I am not going to be talking about Bitcoin. I hate Bitcoin. I hate cryptocurrency. But I think like in the pandemic, I think a lot of people have come to realize or like develop a new relationship with their money, because this, like, the last time that I traveled was in January 2020. I went to Tokyo, and since I founded Brave Wave with Alex in 2000, well, the company was founded in 2014, but like I met Alex in 2013. So since 2013 until now, I've always traveled at least 3 times a year. One time to Japan, one time to Switzerland to meet with Marco, our sound engineer. And sometimes I would go to Switzerland again, or to, just anywhere else. And
Yeah.
spending more than a year, like post Brainwave, not traveling is new for me. I've never done that before. So it made me just analyze my money situation more closely. It made me, like, when I got to see a lot of people, millions and millions of people just losing their jobs in the pandemic, whereas I have this safe and stable job, it really made me appreciate it. And in Kuwait, what they did is they paused loan installments for 6 months. So sometimes, like, you would see someone, like, maybe they have $2,000 or more of just a loan installment, like when their salary drops in their account, like $2,000 or even more would be just subtracted. Maybe it's a house loan, maybe it's a car, maybe it's just a couple different things. So when suddenly you have 6 months of receiving your full salary, I think it really made a lot of people just reassess their relationship with money and how they spend it and how they save it. And it also did the same for me, because it just, like, coincidentally 2019 is when we had the partnership with Limited Run, and that meant that for the first time I actually don't have to fund Bravewave from my own, like, salary from my own bank account. And I used to take a lot of loans for Bravewave, and now I'm not doing it. So I'm in a situation where Bravewave is financially good, and I'm also like on stable grounds. And I had my loan installments paused, and they also did it again. So now, like, right now I'm in the first month of the second pause of loan installments. So in the past it was 6 months, and now it's also going to be another 6 months. And so earlier this year, I didn't know much about saving money, investing money.
Right.
But I knew enough about inflation, and I knew that the value of my money, like, if I just put money in my bank account and I don't touch it for 10 years, that money isn't really gonna grow, but the value of it is gonna decrease, which means a cola that I can buy for $1 now, like, it could be, I don't know, $1.50 in 10 years, maybe more.
Yeah, right.
So this made me want to seek out an investment that is not risky, and that just that at least allows me to keep up with inflation. So that was my goal. I just wanted something safe. And I started looking around. I had a few calls with a financial advisor, and that was really helpful. But then I started talking to one of my friends about just this whole subject, and he told me, well, if you're willing to just sit on your money and just do nothing with it, not spend it, not touch it, for like 10 years, 15 years, well, why don't you put it in the stock market? And I told him, well, the stock market has always scared me. I've seen people close to me lose all their money in the stock market. And then he told me about something called S&P 500. And for someone who doesn't know, like, for someone who knows about the stock market, the S&P 500 is like one of the first few things that you know about, and it's so obvious that you don't think about it. But he told me that the S&P 500 is this, like, it's one stock that you buy, and it gives you the right to, like, have or have stake in the 500 biggest companies in the US, which means sure, your stock portfolio could be, like, volatile. It could go up and down throughout the year. But if your goal is 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, then you can start looking at the data. And if you look at the data, then you will see that the S&P 500 rises by approximately, like, 7 to 10% a year. So you can have a year that it's up by 30% and a year that is down by 10, and so on. But
it will always grow.
Yeah, on a long period of time, it gives you a little bit of dividend, which is just free money, and the stock price also appreciates. So you have money coming in. That's interest. So you have interest coming in, and it's sitting on top of your initial investment, and eventually with time the interest that you're making is gonna make you more interest. But so you have this thing, the interest that keeps on increasing every quarter, but you also have the stock price itself. It fluctuates, but the data tells us that it goes up. Eventually it goes up, like even in the recent crises, like the COVID, the stock market fell, I think, by 30% in March of 2020, but then it just shot way up. But that is unusual, because what usually happens when the stock market, like we have this massive stock market crash, like the dot-com bubble in the 2000s, early 2000s, maybe 99, 2000, 2001. It took from 2000 until 2008 for the price to go back to its original value. So it took us 8 years for that to happen. And then, so now you're happy. Like imagine you've put $10,000 and tomorrow the stock market crashed. It's the year 2000, and you have waited 8 years, and you bought, let's say you bought the S&P 500 at $100 for a share. And now, after the market crash, now it's been 8 years, and it's finally back to $100. And then it crashed again, and it crashed even, like, it was a much bigger crash. It was bigger than the dot-com bubble, and that, I think, made a lot of people scared. What happened in 2008 is just the financial crisis, which affected the whole world. And I mean, one or two banks went bankrupt, but banks, of course, famously, they had a bailout from the government, and the millions and millions of people who lost their jobs and lost their homes, of course, did not receive a bailout. So actually, like understanding the 2008 financial crisis made a lot of the, like, American dissatisfaction in general on my Twitter timeline, like, make some sense, because when like I imagine if people grew up seeing their parents just be evicted and just the entire system like almost collapsing, then that must be really hard. I cannot imagine living through that in the US or just in any country that was affected. But so you invested in 2000, and it took you until 2008. Now, every quarter you would have gotten interest, so you're not, I mean, the value of your stock, you bought it at 100, and then it fell down to, I don't know, 50, 60. So the stock price itself fell down, but you are still receiving interest every quarter. So you are making money. So when I tell you that in 2008 you're back at $100 per share, you, during that time, like during this eight year period, you have also made money from the interest. But leave that aside. In 2008, it crashes again. From $100 to, let's say, I don't know, $30. So a lot of people, understandably, they were stressed, and it was just a difficult time to have your money in the stock market. And then it took 4 years to recover from 2008 until 2012, and now we're finally back at $100 per share. But I think maybe a lot of people, or maybe some people, like, quit at that point because they said, okay, you know what, I'm back where I started. At least I have my money, and let me exit. But if you just see the growth in the stock market from 2012 until now, it's just unbelievable. If you had if you had $10,000 in Apple stocks in 2012, like often you would hear people say, well, if you had like $100 in Apple in the 70s, now you would be, I don't know, a millionaire. But like I'm not even like going that far. I'm just going back to 2012. You would have a lot more money. But I think the good thing about the S&P 500 and similar funds is that you don't have to invest in Apple, you don't have to invest in Tesla, you don't have to invest in any individual company, because the S&P 500, it's a stock that moves with the market. If the market is going up, then the stock price is going to go up. If the market, if there's a market crash, all these 500 companies are also likely are going to crash. So the S&P 500 itself is also going to crash. But looking at the data, it just tells us that like if you put your money in 10, 15, 20 years period, which is what I aim to do, then you can have your money like if your money is up, like if you add money to your investment account monthly, or let's say like once every 2 months, or like once quarterly over a period of 25 years, and you have your money increasing by 10%, 9%, 8% every year, it ends up being just a massive amount of money. And just learning about all of that, learning about how people in the US deal with retirement, because what I understood is that a lot of people in the US, like this is their retirement plan. They open a 401k, and they open maybe even like maybe people who have a lot of money or who have a good paying job, they would open a 401k, and also like what is it called? I think it's called investment retirement account, IRA, and they put money in both of them, and like in 20, 25, 30 years, it just grows to be much bigger. And I think there is criticism for this system, just because a lot of people think or say that like this should be the responsibility of the government, not the responsibility of people. Like putting money in the stock market, which a lot of people like look at as like some kind of a scheme, and
like gambling and volatile.
And that makes sense to me. But as much as I hate the U.S. government, and as much as just growing up made the look of the U.S. in my mind just it was just completely tarnished. The truth of the matter is that right now the U.S. is the dominating leader in the world, and like even if you compare the tech companies from the U.S. versus Europe, there is like a clear winner here right now. Maybe that's gonna change. Like maybe in 10 to 20 years, it's gonna be China who is dominating with their electric vehicles and equivalent of Amazon, and maybe some of their tech brands are gonna grow to become really beloved. Maybe they're gonna. I mean, I think they're on the cusp of threatening U.S. companies, but I think what's clear to me is that the U.S. is dominating, which means that its stock market keeps dominating. And like if you look at the history of the stock market through all the terrible wars that the U.S. has waged against other countries, the stock market goes up and down, but eventually it just continues its rise, and it continues to breaking new grounds, new heights. So that would make me realize that, okay, so I have some money put monthly in local investments here in Kuwait, where the rate of appreciation is not as high as the US, which I think is good. Like I need to diversify. I need to put some money in local investments, but I also want to dabble in the stock market. And I'm glad. I mean, I spent hundreds of hours just watching videos every single day and reading books about investing. And what I realized quickly is that, okay, for the most part, I'm just gonna put my money in funds. They're called ETFs. So it's the S&P 500 and other similar funds that track these big companies. So instead of buying individual shares in Apple and Tesla and Amazon, all of them, I would just put my money in just an automated way of like let the fund managers worry about the performance itself, and I'm just gonna be following the market. And I have I have about 20% of my money in individual stocks. Most of it is in Apple, but trying to dedicating a lot of time to reading about the stock market and reading about like individual companies and looking at their like just financial sheets every quarter, it is exhausting. And
yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
and trying to do it like every quarter is just gonna be too much work, honestly, for me. I have Brave Wave, I have my job, my full-time job. I really my free time is holy to me. So I want to make more money. I want to try and like find a way to secure a better future for myself, but I also like don't want to really spend every quarter just like
there has to be a balance.
Yeah, and I mean it's not like I'm a financial advisor or I'm someone whose job depends on this. So I have decided that, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna put a small percentage of my money in companies that I fully understand, and one of the few companies that I do really understand is Apple, and the rest of it's just gonna be in ETFs. If the market is up, they're going to go up. If it's down, they're going to go down. And I like the thing is, if you're in the US, you can have like this whole investing thing be automated. Once your salary, like once you receive your salary, a certain percentage is just going to be extracted automatically. It's going to be invested and you don't even have to think about it. Whereas with me in Kuwait, I have to like get my salary, then I have to make an international transfer to Denmark because my trading platform is based in Denmark. So I have to send the money in Denmark. I have to wait a few days. When the money is received, they're usually gonna like ask me, okay, we received your money from like a third-party account, and I have to submit proof that this is actually my money, and I sent it through my bank account. So it's just manual work, but I'm still determined to make it happen. So I still invest monthly, but to me it's investing. It's not what do they call it? It's not like trading. I don't buy low and sell high. I just buy and hold. And I do have money on the side so that like if there's a stock market crash, I will have some money that I can buy ETFs and Apple shares when they're down, because I think, like in my opinion, when a good company like Apple crashes, like the stock price crashes, or when a really good ETF like the S&P 500 crashes, and like I see it as a discount. So this is where I can come and just like buy with the money that I have. But otherwise, I just invest monthly, whether the market is up or down, whether people say it's the end of the world or not. And hopefully, like when it's time for my retirement, I can not only like collect a pension from my company and like end of service benefits, but also have my own investments on the side. And honestly, learning about the stock market just made me even more angry at the state of the world, because you can you can see how people who have, so if you have $1 million and you put it in the stock market and you have a rate of return, like a 10% rate of return, that is approximately like your $1 million after 10 years, it's going to be more than $2 million.
Right.
But if you had put, so it doubled, like it more than doubled a little bit. And if you put at $10,000, it's gonna become 20,000, which means it also had doubled, but there's a difference between 10 becoming 20 and $1 million becoming 2 million. It just means that if you have money, like if you have enough money, then you can never go broke. But so this is a system that benefits rich people or people who just have a large enough salary that they can just like significantly contribute monthly to their retirement, whereas people who only have so much to put every month, it's just not gonna be as attractive to them. And like something about that just like makes me just disappointed, and just like I don't know if I want to say like disappointed in society, just disappointed in governments that should have done better. Well, I don't want to say governments. This is really just the US. I don't know how it is in other countries, but I think the US. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. I did not research this, but I think the US is the only country where the stock market plays a huge role in the future of just people, like their retirements. Like their retirements depend on the stock market. If there's a stock market crash and someone was planning to retire tomorrow, then suddenly they have 40% of their portfolio just wiped out, and maybe they're 70 years old and maybe they don't have the luxury of just waiting for the market to recover, and that is certainly sad and difficult to deal with. So I empathize with people who hate the stock market, but I think honestly I just want to make money ethically. Like I don't want to put my money in Bitcoin just because. I mean, I don't believe in it. I don't believe it's worth anything. I think it's just a pyramid scheme. It does not make sense to me. Like I understand people like who hate it solely because of the amount of energy it requires, but I feel like it's hypothetical for me to say that I hate Bitcoin because of the energy waste, because I mean my full-time job is in the oil industry. I mean I live in Kuwait, and Kuwait's main business is just exporting oil and gas to the world, and I work in the gas department, which just fuels Kuwait. So the environmental aspect, I feel like I can't harp on it because I work in an oil company.
Right, it would be kind of hypocritical, right?
Yeah, I just feel like I completely understand what people are saying. I do not reject what they're saying, and I do honestly think that the world is like slowly moving towards just green energy, and honestly I think this is one of the reasons that I always try to be active about, okay, how can I make money and how can I secure my future? Because I always think of oil, which is the main business of Kuwait, as something that is not lasting. Like not the oil running out from the earth, but just world governments moving on to a different kind of energy. And if that happened within like the next 50 years, then I want to have found a way to sustain myself without without my life here in Kuwait. So that is one thing. But so my hatred of Bitcoin is not just because is not because of the energy waste. It's really mostly about it doesn't seem like a safe investment. It's a new thing, and honestly, like I just want to make money, so I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait 10, 20, 25 years on the S&P 500 because I do have data that goes back as far as I think 1929 on the performance of these stocks, of these ETFs, whereas Bitcoin is just something that is completely new, untested. It could be something and it could be nothing, and if it's nothing, then I just rather not be in it,
part of it.
And like just something about it feels slimy. And honestly, when I see a lot of my musicians just hating on Bitcoin and NFTs and Ethereum like all the time on my timeline, it just gives me even, like more reason to like not even touch it or be close to it. So that's one thing. But I also I told you I want to make money ethically. So like even before the cycle of news between Palestine and Israel, I've always like had a stance of not putting any money in any Israeli company. So I remember when I like started learning about investing, and I was reading about a company that I'm not gonna mention, but the person or the website that was recommending this company, like they say this is one of the few stocks that they think is gonna be like, as they call it, a 10-bagger. And 10-bagger just means it's gonna be like it's gonna give you 10x return on your money. And they had such high conviction of the company, but so I downloaded the fact sheet that they have, like the report that they made, and I started reading, and it said like this company is based in Israel, and that just made me immediately just stop reading and not be interested. So that is something that I have that is a limit that I have put on myself, and that I honestly know that the little money that I have, it's not gonna make or break any company. I honestly don't think it's going to support, like, quote unquote, support any company. So it's not like me investing in this Israeli company is really going to do anything for it. I'm just one small investor.
More of a principle, right?
Yeah, it's just a principle. It's honestly, it's the same thing as me wearing my seatbelt when I just go to a grocery store, which is like just a stick throw away from me. It's just
Right.
I'm there in 2 minutes, but I still put my seatbelt. And I also use my turn signals even when no one is behind me or in front of me, just because I want to get in the habit of doing it, so that when it matters, I am actively thinking of it and aware of it. And this is the same thing. It's difficult for me to watch movies or TV shows with maybe one good example is Louis C.K. I was a huge fan of him. His comedy, like his stand-up shows just leave me in tears. And when news of like the sexual allegations came to be, it just made it difficult for me to engage with it. I mean, I'm sitting in my room, I can watch anything I want, and no one really has to know about it. So I can sit and just watch all the Louis C.K. content that I want without without my my followers knowing about it. But it's just like the principles of it. So I thought, okay, I'm just it's just difficult for me to deal with. I mean, it's not like I'm equating Louis C.K. with a Zionist occupying regime, but it's just the principle of things. And some people could, like, they might not like Louis C.K. They might hate the sexual allegations. They might believe it and hate it, but they can still like engage with the art as it is. So so people have just different reactions to this. They just have different stances. But I thought, like even when I taught my friends how to invest, it was just easier to tell them, look, don't use this service, that service, and the other one because they are based in Israel. Don't put your money in these companies because they're in Israel. Just do anything else you want. And only now, with what's happening in the world now, and our timelines are full of Palestinian news, that it made me aware how silent this resistance is, because this is something that I tweeted about stock market memes and investing a few times on my Twitter timeline, but I never, like, not once mentioned that, hey, by the way, I don't support Israeli companies, even though that is a hard stance that I took and that I'm passing down to my friends. But it just made me realize that a lot of this resistance against the Zionist occupying regime is just silent between us, between Arabs. We all do it collectively. We think about it. It's just that it just got ingrained in us, and we don't really talk about it that much. And only now that we're realizing, okay, mobilizing and talking and educating our friends the same way that they educated us last year, and honestly the same way that Asian people rose up earlier this year with the rise in Asian hate crimes. And I mean, I follow a lot of Asians, either Japanese or Asian Americans. I mean, Alex, my co-founder, Brave Wave co-founder, is Asian American, and just because I follow a lot of Asian/Asian Americans, I see a lot of what they boast, and because of the rise in hate crimes, a lot of my friends have posted about war crimes that the US have done in Philippines and Vietnam and all these other Asian countries. And I think maybe I used this word a few times, but the silver lining in all of this is that, like, I am learning a lot from my friends, and my friends are learning a lot from me and people like me. And this honestly makes me feel good. It does not, like, I don't feel isolated, to be honest. I am disappointed that not a lot of people in the gaming industry are talking about this, but I still think that the amount of awareness that is being raised right now is just unprecedented. It really never happened before. And it just, like, there's something good about this. Like, it feels good when, I mean, the other day I had an hour-long call with Marco, the co-founder and our mixing engineer, and he's from Switzerland, so he's a Swiss guy and I'm an Arab, and we were both just talking about what's happening in Palestine, and he talked about how he grew up with with the image of Israel that the Western world had imprinted on everyone, and how everything is slowly falling apart now, and how the general public is slowly realizing that, okay, what we've been fed up like all these years is just lies, and and it just feels good to feel like even my friends who had just a different upbringing, just completely different lives than I did, we're still like sharing our causes, and me, a Kuwaiti guy talking to a Swiss guy can still like bring me like catharsis of just talking to someone else who is just listening to me. So I didn't need to talk to another Arab to feel heard. Like just talking to Marco was really helpful, and that makes me happy. That makes me really happy. I think for all the bad that social media has done, I think it brought a lot of people together in a way that maybe we haven't been before, and that is, I don't know what the opposite of disheartening is. Maybe it's just heartening. So I want to say that's
heartwarming.
yeah. Maybe that's heartwarming to me.
Yeah. And yeah, before we move on, is there anything like any resource you want to shout out, like a quick shout out, anything? I think you mentioned that you were reading like a newsletter or something. Is there anything you want to shout out regarding the investment before we're gonna move on?
So my favorite newsletter is called Morning Brew, and I read it every day. It's a really fun newsletter. I think it's written and edited by millennials, which means millennials and what is the generation after us? Is it Zoomers, or is there?
I think it's Z or Alpha. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. So whoever the generation after us is, so it's millennials and that generation. And because it's written by younger people, it is like business/investing news in a way that is fun and I feel like it's written for people like me who don't really know much about investing, and they're just learning, and that newsletter, like every day when I open my email to read it, it just makes me feel good. It's fun. It's really light. It's not. It's just really designed well. If that can be said about a newsletter, and I mean, the way that I taught myself the stock market, it was. I don't think it's unconventional now, but I think it makes it difficult to give one resource to someone and tell them start from here, because I started from all over the place. I think I watched an average of 17 hours per week of YouTube videos, because the YouTube app on my iPhone, they have stats and they tell me the average of what I watched every week. Right. And for 2 months, the average is always like 14, 15, 16 hours. So I just watched a whole kind of content. I just absorbed everything. So it's difficult to give one clear path. But what I can say is, just like if you're interested in this idea of putting your money in this collective stock, a stock that owns 500 companies, that splits your money in 500 companies, then just go to YouTube and just type S&P 500. And you just start from there. Just read about the S&P 500, understand what it is, and that's what started it all with me. Because when I realized that there is a stock that is relatively safe on the long term, that I don't need to read about companies at all, that all I need to do is follow the advice of many of the millionaires who managed the money of normal regular people. And what they do is they just put it in the S&P 500, and after 20, 25, 30 years it grows to become a substantial amount of money. So if you're interested in that, just start with Googling or YouTubing S&P 500 and go from there. And I do actually, there is one specific video that maybe I need to give you the link for it, and maybe
sure
you can
I'm gonna put it in the show notes. Yeah,
because like just a quick story. There is a famous story about a guy, maybe in a seminar, and this was in 2007, and he asked Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett is this a famous billionaire who made his money from the stock market. So this guy asked Warren Buffett, and he told him, so do you think I should put my money, like my retirement money, with money managers, or should I, or like hedge funds, or should I just invest in the S&P 500? And what Warren Buffett said is that hedge funds or money managers, like, they could beat the market in 1 year or 2 years, but on a long period of time, when you just remove the expenses, and they have these fund managers and hedge funds, they cost a lot. So when you just remove their cost and you look at the rate of return for your money when it's with them and your money with the S&P 500, it's gonna be substantially less. So he kind of like put a competition. He dared any hedge fund to compete with him. He said, I'm gonna put $1 million on the S&P 500, and these money managers, they have $1 million and they can do anything with it. They can like short companies, they can buy low, sell high, they can do anything you want. But they have $1 million, I have $1 million in the S&P 500, and let's see who does better. And what's fascinating about this test is that he really did his he put his theory to work. He put $1 million in the S&P 500. He did nothing else with it. And then a year later, the financial crisis happened, and 40% of his million just get completely wiped out. So if he were to just draw that money in 2008, it would have been like $100,000. But of course, that was not the plan. The plan was 10 years. So he put it in 2007, and by 2016 or 17, by him doing nothing, it grew to become $2 million, and I want to say $200,000, something like that. Okay. And the hedge fund managers, they beat him. So they had 10 years, like the challenge was 10 years, and they slightly beat him for 2 years maybe, and the rest of it was they were just constantly underperforming. And that was a really good test to his theories, that you don't need to be Einstein to invest in the stock market. Just invest regularly, let compound interest do its magic, and that should be enough. And I think if reading about the S&P 500 is something I highly recommend, I think that's the first thing that anyone should start with. And the second thing, maybe to read about compound interest, because I think a lot of people, maybe there are a lot of people like me who simply don't know anything about the stock market, which means they don't know much about investing, and they don't know how compounding works. So reading about compound interest, how it works and how it grows your money, is a really good way to just learn about it. And one podcast that I really enjoyed is called Get Money. So it's a getmoneypodcast.com, and it's a really short, I want to say like series. It's just maybe I'm looking at it, I think it's like 10-12 episodes, like one episode about investing, and they actually have like an episode just 17 minutes called Investing for Virgins, and they just outline everything. They have episodes about debt, about credit cards, and they just explain everything in a beginner friendly way. And that would be my advice. Like, read about the S&P 500, read about compounding, maybe listen to 1 or 2 episodes from the Get Money podcast, and then make up your mind. Is this something you're willing to do, or is it like too much risk for you? But I think at least knowing about it and knowing about what you could miss by not doing it is good. Because I really wish someone taught me all of this like 5, 7, 10 years ago, but it just had to be now.
Okay, sure. Awesome. And yeah, I think this is the longest segment we ever spent on the guest topic, but I think it's awesome to hear people talk about the stuff they're passionate about. I think this is why I always included this question into the show. And yeah, very, very happy that I got to have you on the show for this huge of a segment. But moving on to the regular show, this is going to be a huge episode. I really love it. And since we already talked about this, you were one of the co-founders of the record label Brave Wave. So maybe you could give us like a short story. I already know the story, but I think it's so cool to start with like your relationship with Captain Tsubasa or Captain Majed, how it's called in Kuwait, and how you funded Brave Wave. Maybe we could give the abridged version of it.
Yeah, so I just had a blog where I was talking about games, and one day I thought it would be nice for the blog's first anniversary if I had like a short EP, a short album, because the very, very few people who read the blog know that I have always been passionate about game music. So I hired a few musicians. I think the first one that I hired is Eric Sirke. He's the Spelunky composer, and he agreed to make a few tracks, and then I basically just bing bong to different composers. I would go to a new one and I would tell him, by the way, Eric is making music for me, and then they would agree, and in my subsequent emails I would just include the list of people who agreed. And eventually I went from a small EP to a 20-track album, and then it became like a 30+ track album, and I had to like cut it in half, and that was the first album that we released, World 1 2. And during this period of me designing an album and just making it up as I go, I contacted Alex, my co-founder, Alex Aniel, and I only contacted him because I wanted someone to translate my messages to the few Japanese composers that I worked with, namely Keiji Yamagishi, the composer of Captain Tsubasa and Ninja Gaiden, and also Manami Matsumai, the composer of Mega Man. And so Alex began with me just as a translator. And then a year later, he convinced me to come to Japan and to meet all these composers that I have released music with. And it was a really good time. Alex was very, very, just very nice and very kind during the whole trip. And then he suggested that, if we actually want to work with like the big companies, like if we want to release soundtracks of Mega Man and Captain Tsubasa and all of that, we need to be an actual company and not just a page on Bandcamp. And I tried looking into opening or establishing a company in Kuwait, and it was just so complex and just rudimentary and just old. And Alex then went ahead and looked into how to establish a company in Japan, and he did that. And it's of course we did that, and we already had relationships with, for example, Marco, my mixing engineer, and the person who blesses every album and soundtrack we releases. But also we had like relationships or existing relationships with people like Keiji and Manami that I mentioned, but also Saori Kobayashi, the Panzer Dragoon lady, and Yoko Shimomura, the Street Fighter 2 lady, and Takashi Tataeshi, the Mega Man 2 composer, and just many, 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 many others. So what started as just a small EP, a small album that I wanted for my music blog that only has a handful of readers, grew to become this large East meets West kind of album with a lot of Japanese composers who never worked for anyone non-Japanese before, and also a lot of just enthusiastic like remixers from the OC remix community and just Western composers. And then that snowballed into a record label. But I think what's special about the Brave Wave story is that it's not just another record label. It is a record label that is home to some of the best musicians in the world, in my opinion. And I think what's powerful about Brave Wave, what has always worked for it, is just this the narrative that we have, which is we're a label that works for the betterment of the musicians that we work with. Like, we work for them. it's a funny relationship. I mean, it's a company that me and Alex own, but we work for these people. Like we do our best to just make their lives better and connect them with games again and let them make solo albums again. So the fact that it's not just a music label that a bunch of friends started, but is actually a music label with a specific mission about improving the lives of the musicians in it. I mean, you could argue that every label has that aspiration of we want to make the lives of our musicians better, but like our mission was maybe slightly different because it was not just about amassing a large number of musicians, but it was more challenging. It was just going to these obscure Japanese composers, game composers who quit the industry and just don't care about it anymore, and just trying to reason with them and make them,
bring them back, right?
We just I honestly, and I just wanted them to know that, by the way, all the time that you put in making this music, people actually like it. They like it so much that they're willing to travel to Japan, like just be on a 12, 13, 14 hour plane just to meet with you and just convince you to make an album. Not because that album is going to make me money, but because I think you should do it. I think that's what has always worked for Brave Wave, is that it has always felt like it's just a different kind of label. I really think, I still think it's a different kind of label. And like, even if I die tomorrow and maybe, I mean, I don't know who is going to take charge of the creative stuff if I'm not there. Maybe it's going to be Marco, maybe it's going to be someone else. But I think the essence of the label, which is a label for these musicians who have been forgotten and have spent a decade or more just not being appreciated, I think that like that essence is still going to be there, because that's what everyone in the label works towards. And that is a really nice story. That maybe that's what makes the label like it makes it just feel different, not to other record labels, but also to any other kind of company, because it's not. It still feels very personal. I mean, we have contracts with all kind of big companies, but that soul that we started with is still there. And my love for music, for the sake of music, not for the sake of like sales or PR or marketing or getting better deals, is I still have it. I still feel it. It's what drives me to wanna release more albums. I wanna I wanna release more albums just because I love the music, and I love working with these people. And if we don't make money from it, then that's a shame. But I just enjoy working with all the musicians and the artists that we have so much that I was willing to withstand all the losses until Limited Run came and helped us just work better and just organize better and just have a better pipeline.
Yeah, awesome. And you just mentioned you're in charge of the creative side of directing the album. So maybe you could take us through the journey of what it all takes, or some of the steps it takes to direct an album from the creative side.
Yeah. So there is one album that I'm working on right now. So the first album that I worked on, it's called World 1-2, and it was just, in my opinion, like retro. Actively, when I look at it, it looks like a random collection of music tracks that I asked people to contribute to. So, but that became the album that people knew us from, and it's the album that sells a lot at conventions, and just people love it. I stopped loving it somewhere along the way, but people still do, and it still sells. So I thought, okay, I want to revisit that idea. I want to revisit this idea of having Japanese composers, Western composers, but like, what should it be? And I knew that I wanted to have gaming remixes, because honestly, it's really difficult to convince people to listen to an album of original music. So I thought, if we can have gaming remixes, that could be a nice draw. So, okay, so I have these few ideas. Where do we go from there? And so think of all the composers. They are ready to work, but they don't like what should they do? So I needed to come up with the idea, and my idea was, well, maybe the album needs to have a theme. How can I have original tracks and game remixes? And I came to the conclusion then that, well, what if we have our like big name composers make a track, an original track, and then, so let's say Manami, she's the composer of Mega Man, and she makes a track, an original track, just completely new, that is just her signature sound. It sounds like a Mega Man track. And then you finish that track, but you're still in the like Manami sphere, because you move on from a Manami track to a remix of Mega Man 1, which she composed, and then a remix of Shovel Knight, which is also a game that she composed for, and Mega Man 10, another game. Actually,
Right.
I don't think we did Mega Man 10, but anyway. So the idea is it's kind of like this album that has composer sections. So the first section is Manami, and then I'm actually opening the album now. The first section is Manami, and then let's say the Shovel Knight remix. So Manami makes the original track, but the remixes, I get to pick who composes what. So for example, when Manami's original track ends, a Mega Man 1 medley starts, and it's arranged and performed by Super Strikers. It's the rock band, like the in-house rock band at Brave Wave. And when that Mega Man 1 track finishes, there's a Shovel Knight remix, and it's arranged and produced by Akari Kaida, and Akari is the composer of Mega Man Battle Network. So you have our big composers making an original track, and then remixes by their peers. And then we move on to a new composer section, and this section is the Ninja Gaiden section, because the original track is by it's a track composed and produced by 3 people. It's Keiji Yamagishi, the composer of Ninja Gaiden 1, and then Ryoichi Nitta, the composer of Ninja Gaiden 2, and Kaori Nakabai, the composer of the Ninja Gaiden 3. So you have the composers of Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3 making an original track. And when that track ends, we have remixes of Ninja Gaiden 1, Ninja Gaiden 2, Ninja Gaiden 3. And then we move on to the next section, and so on and so forth. And so these composers, they are ready to work. They need an idea, and it's up to me to contextualize a theme that makes sense for the listener, because it doesn't sit well with me to just ask everyone to just give me a remix of Mega Man and Shovel Knight and Ninja Gaiden and Captain Tsubasa, and let's just release an album with that, because yes, that would be a nice collection of remixes, but what is the story there? Is there a story? Whereas with this concept that I came up with, it kind of becomes an album about the label. It's these institutional composers who helped us make the label. They are making new music, and then from our large pool of excellent musicians, they contribute music that these institutional composers have made, and it just made sense. It feels good as a listener, I hope, to look at the album and just you just see it progress smoothly. You have original track, remix, original track, remix, and it has a nice flow to it. It gives meaning to the remixes instead of just being a remix album for the sake of a remix album selling well. And we're still thinking about the naming of the album and the cover art of the album and what it should be. And I still think all of it needs to come together, even though this is largely going to be a remix album, as in the number of remixes is far more than the number of original tracks. But I still just want to continue this method of giving a good theme, a good context behind everything. So we need a good name, we need a good artwork, and I think I have made my job more difficult on me, because I don't need to do that. I have some of the best musicians that are alive today, and I can make albums much faster if I just become less hard on the process, and if I just relax a little bit and just churn out albums. But I knew that I just can't do that. I need every album that I work on to feel like the biggest thing in my life. And after that, I'm allowed to hate it and allowed to just move on from it. But as I'm working on it, if I start treating it like it's just, let me just finish from it so I can jump onto the next big thing, it just would not feel substantial to me. And so this album, I think we started working on it sometime in 2017 or 2018. I think it's 17, and it's just taking a lot of time, and we're slow with everything, methodical with everything. But this is also an album. I think this is going to be the first compilation album that I have designed exactly to my specifications, because with World 1 2 I was a new person. People did not have the ability to trust me because they don't know who I am.
Right, yeah.
Which means I also didn't have enough money because my salary was not as much as I receive now to fund the albums. So I could not mix every track with Marco, because Marco mixed a few tracks on World 1 2, but I could not let him mix all the tracks. And I don't know what's the best analog to mixing. I think like it's kind of like writing a book without an editor, because there are writers who could write a book from cover to cover and edit the book themselves and release it, and it would be just astounding. But I think the majority of writers really benefit from having a skilled editor, and that is something that I use all the time, like with the statements that we release, with the blog posts, like everything we release, it always goes through at least one, sometimes two editors. And a mixing engineer is maybe a good analog to that. An album without a mixing engineer, I mean, there are no absolutes, but an album without a mixing engineer, or if the music, sometimes a musician is a really good mixing engineer. There are good examples that just escape me. One of them is Aphex Twin, for example. He honestly, I think even Aphex Twin, who is revered by everyone I know and is considered one of the best musicians alive, I think, I could be mistaken, but I think he has a mixing engineer. And if not, I mean, he is one of the few people who could do that, who could release a book without an editor. But what I like with this new album is that from the beginning, I told the composers, okay, these are my rules, and I hope you don't object to them. And one of them is, I want to have the liberty to mix this track by us. I want to sit with Marco. And if Marco tells me that this track does not need mixing, then I'm going to go with his suggestion. But if he wants to mix it, and maybe he has a few ideas, maybe a few radical ideas to change something or to try something, I wanted their blessing. I mean, I could do whatever I want, but that's not, I really don't want that. I want their blessing. I want this. And I think them, like the musicians, knowing from the get-go that, okay, we're going to be contributing a piece of the puzzle to a larger puzzle. Maybe that makes it fall easier on their ears, that, okay, we are willing to cooperate because we realize that this is just a big project and we're one part of it. And we managed to do that. We just finished from mixing all the tracks of the album, and I have put the album on my phone, and I listen to it regularly when I go to work, and it's just a thing of beauty. It's an album by 20 plus musicians, yet all of it is produced or like mixed by one person, and there is a kind of uniformity in it that is, in my opinion, absent in all the other compilation albums that I heard, including the albums that I released in the past. Like, there is something about this that makes it feel like it's a sculpture of many materials, but by one sculpture, if that makes sense, and
Right.
that makes it a really a near and dear album to my heart. So I don't know when we're gonna release it. Like maybe this year, maybe the next. Like every year I say it's gonna be this year, so I don't really know. But I'm working hard to just to finish licensing all the tracks and be able to just finish it and release it. But I'm really excited for it. It's like I said, if an album feels like it's the most important album, or not the most important album, if an album feels like the most important thing in my life, then I'm really happy, because it means like I'm on the right path. And this one has been giving me that vibe for the past 4 years, so that is a good thing. And I'm just I cannot wait to release it. It's gonna have a lot of surprises. It's maybe one of them is a Mega Man 2 remix by Yoshitaka Suzuki, the composer of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy 15. And we have a new original track by Takashi Tateishi, the composer of Mega Man 2, who is he's a busy man. He does not make music. He has his own company, but he still made time for us to actually make an original track. And it's just a lot of good music, a lot of surprises, so many collaborations, and hopefully people will get to listen to it sometime this year. If not, then 2022.
Yeah, that's incredible. Really, really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
And the company, like the Brave Wave, is also very famous for their Generation series. So does your work, like you just mentioned, coming up with a theme and everything, I would assume that your work differs quite drastically from working on the collaboration albums with like different composers to like something like a Generation release.
Yeah, a Generation release, it's just different. It's different, but I mean, even the Generation series, it's something that I came up with. Then I pitched it to Marco, and he thought it was a good idea. Then we brought it to Alex, and honestly, at the beginning, we thought like Generation series. For the listener who might not know, Generation series is just our the brand or the name that we give to the soundtracks that we release, and we were heavily inspired from Criterion Collection, because when I'm a huge movies fan. I watch movies a lot religiously, and when I Google or go to Amazon and search for a movie and I see a few versions and one of them Criterion Collection, I don't even need to do any research. I just buy the Criterion Collection edition, because I know for a fact that it's just gonna be the best of the best. It's gonna be the best restoration, the best extras. It's going to come with a booklet that has a nice essay, and just it treats the movie as it deserves. And I wanted the same for game soundtracks, so we started with Street Fighter 2, and we spent tens and tens, if not hundreds of hours, just listening to all the different versions of Street Fighter 2 soundtracks. We had over 40 different soundtracks of Street Fighter 2 on all kind of consoles, and we just had to listen to all of them and just come to a decision. Okay, so this is gonna be like a definitive soundtrack. So what should it be? Should it be just the arcade, or should it be arcade plus Genesis plus Super Nintendo, or is that too much? And just that kind of process is interesting, because not a lot of people were doing it at the time. When we started working on Street Fighter 2, it was before it was before data discs have released their vinyl. So it was a completely kind of like untested thing, because the first person who brought up the idea of releasing soundtracks on vinyl is Brett Elston. He works at Capcom now, and he worked at Capcom then. And like when he suggested vinyl, I just thought like why, like who gives a shit about vinyl? I mean, I know there are people who like vinyl, but I mean, I still don't listen to vinyl. I just don't have the space for it. I have a lot of vinyl discs. I just don't have the space for the just equipment, and it did not make sense to me. And as we were working on Generation Series 1, Street Fighter 2, data discs became a thing, and they announced their first release. Maybe I'm mistaken. I think it was Streets of Rage. And and we realized that this could be a thing. And then shortly after, if I remember correctly, we released Street Fighter 2, and I mean Street Fighter 2 was so successful that we were constantly sold out in less than a minute. Like we would post the album on Bandcamp, we would just have a short like lot, like maybe just 400, 500 copies, and they would just fly in less than a minute, and I would get a lot of angry emails from people wanting more. But we hit the ceiling with our manufacturer. They cannot manufacture more vinyl for us at the time because they were just backed by so many projects, and we just printed as much as we can for that first batch, and we proved a model with that release. We proved that this works because I mean, I'm thankful that Capcom took this chance. They could have easily said no, but they took this chance on us, and it ended up. So we had with that project, we set precedent, and now we can go to other companies and tell them, look what we did with Street Fighter 2. Let us do that with Ninja Gaiden and Sonic Adventure and all these other soundtracks, and that's where we are now. We have a large catalog that we can go to new publishers and not with much convincing, just show them that this is a good thing for them. It's a way to boost their IPs, the music, and just get fans to engage with the games and the soundtracks that they like in just a different way. But now we have like thousands, hundreds, I don't know, of new record labels that are emerging every day.
Yeah, right.
And just releasing all kind of soundtracks. So the landscape is more competitive now, but that made me actually appreciate the genesis of Brave Wave more, because the genesis of Brave Wave was just about the composers. And even if one day we stop making soundtracks, if soundtrack vinyl just becomes something that people don't care that much about, there is a legacy for the label, like we can always fall back to. And I mean, we are still we're still releasing albums of original music for game composers. We still give them that chance. We still get contracts to compose for games, and I try my best to bring these Japanese composers on every project that we receive. So this rise of gaming record labels just made me realize that we're actually more than just a vinyl label. We vinyl is personally, I don't care much about it. I care about the preservation of these soundtracks, the fact that I mean, I fought to have digital soundtracks much more than I fought about vinyl. I give or take for me, but digital is extremely important because I wanted these. I mean, I don't want these soundtracks to just be artifacts where people only get to listen to them like once a month when they're in the mood. I want them to have digital files, to play them on their phones when they're on their way to work, and just engage with the music directly, not as this artifact of a hobby that requires time and isolation like vinyl, but having the chance to do both. You could be passionate about the vinyl that you bought, but you also have your digital code, and you can just put it on your phone and listen to it all the time. And it was important that Capcom agrees to that, because when they did, then we can just go aggressively with other companies and just try to convince them as much as we can that let us publish this digitally. There's good money to be had, and people are just gonna rip it anyway from the vinyl. It's not gonna sound good, and we're putting a ton of time and effort by some of the best engineers in the world to make your music sound as good as it could be. So just let us give people a better chance to listen to it easily, and that is something I'm proud of. That, and the fact that we pay the composers that we involve in the project. So Yoko Shimomura, when he announced the Street Fighter 2 album, she takes a cut from the sales, even though we don't need to do that. Our contract is with Capcom, and Capcom owns the music, but we still gave Yoko a cut, because like I said, these people, like I consider them as like these are my people, and I am trying to do, or we are trying to do our best to like give them better platforms and just spread their music more. And they should share with us not just the image of the label, but also the fruits of the contracts that we bring in. And it was the same with Keiji Yamagishi and him bringing us the Ninja Gaiden soundtracks, and him negotiating with Koei. And I can't think of any other label that does this. I mean, if you work with a new musician on a new game, that is a different story. But going to a publisher like Capcom and Square Enix and Sega and giving a cut to the original composers who you don't have to do it, that is one of the things that just makes me proud of the work that we do, and that that empathy, and just not just empathy, but like we actually care about the people that we're releasing. It's not just a cycle of contracts and vinyl that we release. We do actually, I personally care about all the musicians that we have, and I want to see them do better. And they don't even have to do better with Brave Wave. Like, I just want them to make more money and have better lives and do what they want. And if what they want is to make more music, then that's good for both of us. And that is I think what keeps me excited to do work for Brave Wave, because I don't think it's a method of working that goes out of style. And I hope that I get to keep doing it just until the day I just dropped out and die.
Yeah, totally. And related to this, are there any books or other pieces of media that really helped you with your creative process for working on these albums?
Books. I don't know about books. I know for sure that photography inspires me a lot, and movies inspire me a lot. I watch a lot of movies. Actually, sometimes what I do with Marco is that we would rent a movie together. So I'm in Kuwait, he's in Switzerland. We rent a movie together. We have our headphones on. We're on a phone call, and we just hit play together. We watch a movie together, and then we just discuss it and just discuss the photography, the storytelling, everything. And I think movies just visually inspire me the most. And I'm the kind of person who buys a ton of art books, just because sometimes simply going through just beautiful artworks, page after page, just stimulates my mind in a different way. And I want to say my two biggest influencers are Stanley Kubrick when it comes to movies, and Storm Thorgerson. So Storm Thorgerson is the guy. He has like I don't know how to call it. Marketing design agency. Yeah, I think it's a design agency, and he made a lot of phenomenal cover art for bands like the Cranberries and Muse, and like he did the artwork for a lot of Muse's albums, like Absolution and Black Holes and Revelations, and just many others. He did the single like Uprising for Muse. I'm not sure if he made the cover for the album The Resistance, but anyway, he makes these absurdist, surreal kind of cover arts, and he inspires me a lot, because I work in a field where it's easy to get away with something that has Mario and Mega Man on the cover, which, I mean, this is something that I did with my first album, World 1 2. It just has like Mario dressed as Link, or maybe it's the other way around, and that is fine, that is nice, it draws in people. But I think I personally have higher aspirations as an artist and as a director, and like for this Giants album, we are going the extra mile to feature something that is not gamey, as in not something that you look at and you think, oh, Mega Man, Zelda, Metroid. Like it's nothing like that. It's just like it's something that fits the context of the album. And I think Storm is my biggest influence there, because the way that he connects with the music, like he receives music from bands and artists that has nothing to do with him, and he theorizes and thinks with his band of terrific modelers and photographers and artists and illustrators, and they just come up with the most amazing ideas. And I think if you just go to Google and just type Storm Thorgerson cover arts, you're just gonna see a ton of inspiring, amazing, very, very unique cover arts. And I come from a generation, I mean, I didn't grow up with vinyl, I grew up with cassettes, and then I moved to CDs, but I was the kind of person who would put his cassette or CD, and then just, like, that would be my main activity. I would not play music to like, I don't know, walk to a destination. I would just sit down, lay down, and go through the booklet and obsessively stare at the front cover, and then go through the lyrics and just read everything. And because of that, album covers mean a lot to me. They're not just something that I need to finish quickly for an album. I need to give it the same amount of care that I do for the rest of the album, just because I still care about that album experience. Like
right.
A lot of what music feels now, I think, to newer generations is, opening Spotify or Apple Music and just going through different playlists. You have a heavy metal playlist and a rock playlist and pop playlist, and like and this is not how I listen to music. I don't. I very rarely listen to playlists. I usually just listen to albums in full. I rarely skip tracks. I mean, sometimes I do, but I love I love an album experience. I love to just spend a lot of time with just one album. And like Evanescence, they just released their first album in I think in March, and it's the first album of original material since like nearly 10 years. So I am still listening to that album obsessively. There is like no other album I'm listening to. It's only that, like it's only the Brave Wave new compilation album plus the Evanescence album. And I've listened to some of the songs in the Evanescence album so much that I know exactly when Amy is going to take a pause to inhale and sing again, and that, like, that kind of obsessiveness is also what drives the tracks and the albums that we make. Like I'm that kind of obsessive album listener, and I expect there are other people like me who listen to music. So I try to pepper our albums with like motifs. Like even though it's a compilation album by different composers, I still want it to feel like there is like one architect behind it. It's not just a random collection of music. It's something that, like, if I didn't exist, the album wouldn't exist. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that in, I want my presence in the album not just to be felt, but to be meaningful. Like I don't want to just be the guy who asks their musicians to give him tracks and then release them. Like I want my presence to be worthwhile for me and for the listener. And going back to the inspirations, I highly recommend just going through just a Google image search of Storm Thorgerson, because first of all, you're gonna like the listener is gonna recognize a lot of these covers. And the other thing is that like no one makes covers like these anymore. It's just completely wild. It's just out of this world. And I hope one day I can make something as like half as good as some of Storm Thorgerson's like design agency's covers.
Awesome, yeah. And speaking of Evanescence, what makes Like You and Your Star such great tracks from Evanescence?
Oh, Like You and Your Star. So these are my two favorite tracks. Funny enough, so Like You and Your Star, so both of them are from the Open Door album. And I think there's something about a slow Evanescence track that ends with just an explosion of instruments, because Like You starts with, if I remember correctly, just the bass and some like dissonant synth and Amy's voice, and that's it. Like there's nothing else. And then instruments slowly creep in, the drums and the guitars and everything, and the song like starts just so, like, she starts so broken, like even the way she sings, because the song Like You is about her dead sister. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the lyrics are amazing, but also the way that she sings. She starts like in this like broken state, and she just ends up with she just unleashes her anger. And what I like about that is that, like, it's kind of like when she unleashes her anger at like the last chorus, like this whole, like the rock band just rises up, and just like the guitars and the drums and everything just scream with her. And that's something that is present in few tracks in their whole career. But like You and Your Star, both of them are kind of like that. Your Star just starts incredibly, just unnervingly slow. It's just piano and Amy's voice, and she just sings like it starts completely, like it ends completely differently to how it starts, and it escalates slowly. It starts with just her voice and the piano, just extremely slow, just extremely painful, and then it just like slowly crescendos up and up and up until just you have the chorals or the chorus, like the vocals and the background vocals and the orchestra and the whole rock band, and like this epic way of progressing through a track is just my favorite. I like when she starts slow and then explodes. I don't like the slow tracks. So My Immortal, which is like one of their famous tracks, I'm not a fan personally. It's the kind of track that if it played, most likely I will just skip it. And I mean, this is something I think that is maybe normal with fans and singles, because we're kind of like sick of singles. Like when I listen to Britney Spears, I don't listen to Toxic a lot because like it has been exhausted. I just listen to the stuff that people don't know about, and it's kind of the same with Evanescence. But the attention to details and just they just have a unique sound profile. The mix of rock and orchestra and this like gothic feel to it, and Amy's vocals is just I really tried hard to find music like it, like bands like them. There's just not many, and no other band that hits me personally like Evanescence. I do like Within Temptation, but Evanescence to me is just that's my favorite band.
And we started with the podcast with your journey into investing. And I think a while ago you also had your journey into drinking coffee. So I wanted to know, like, what makes your perfect cup of coffee, and does it include a croissant from the Happy Crescent?
Well, not always, but I learned quickly that I really need to stop buying like expensive coffee from Starbucks and Costa Coffee and like all these chains, because I need coffee every day and I need good tasting coffee. And for a while I would just like drink like Nescafe powder. I would just pour in hot water and that was enough for me. But then a friend and I did try like the Nespresso capsules, but I just find them I don't think they're good tasting. So it took until one of my friends from Saudi Arabia visited Kuwait, and we went to like a specialty coffee, and he made me drink a V60 cup. And I think he chose Ethiopian beans, and like when you make filter coffee with Ethiopian beans, it is acidic, it is sweet, and that just shocked my nerves because I'm used to coffee as being just a bitter drink, and this was like this very sweet drink with no added sugars or anything. Like this is just how it is extracted from the filter, and that kick-started my interest in filter coffee. I thought, okay, you know what? I need to know how to make this. I want to drink this every day, and I still do. Every day I make myself a cup of coffee in the morning. Like I wake up 5 a.m. For my job, and I make my cup at 6, and then I go to my job. And in the evening, it depends. Sometimes, I mean, just like today, I make tea, just Assam or like Indian chai, or and usually with Assam and Indian chai, I like to have some milk and sugar in it. and with stuff like Earl Grey, I can just drink it without. I mean, Earl Grey is still nice with milk, but most of the time I just drink it without. And also, I mean, in Kuwait has a big tea and coffee culture, but it's like it's the Kuwaiti style of tea and it's the Arabian style of coffee, so it's different from like the way that we brew tea in Kuwait is just completely different from, for example, the UK, because in the UK, or like, I mean, just in the Western world, you would have a cup and you would put your leaves for, I don't know, 5 minutes, and then you would just remove them and you move on. Whereas in Kuwait, you are expected to leave your tea bags for an upwards of 30 minutes, even an hour, and just inside like a large pot of hot water and the tea. So what a Westerner would think of leaving tea bags for 30 minutes is like, this is gross, because this is just gonna like extract all the, like, I don't know, like the acidic taste of the leaves. Right. Whereas people here just like they refer to that process as the tea is getting stronger, and it's just a completely different way of thinking. And I do like both. Like, I mean, tomorrow I'm gonna have my cousins. We're gonna play Street Fighter, and I'm gonna make them this Arabian Kuwaiti tea, and we all love it. But I still kind of like gravitate towards this American filter coffee with the V60. And actually, I don't know if V60 specifically is American or not. I think it's a Japanese company. But anyway, like I gravitate towards filter coffee with the V60 and just the Western style of drinking tea. But I mean, I like everything. It's like drinking, like just a hot beverage with a movie or a TV show, or even like playing a game is just. It's just I can't imagine my life without it. It is my drug of choice. Like I'm not into drugs. I'm just into coffee and tea.
Yeah. And I think we had such a great conversation, but I have still one more question.
Sure.
It is related to your relationship with the composers. And you just mentioned that you have, at Brave Wave, really pay a lot of attention to your relationship with the composers and the people you collaborate with. But I wanted to know, since you a while ago started learning Japanese, how did this change your interaction and your relationship with the composers?
Yeah, so I follow them on Facebook and on Instagram, and as much as I can, I try to comment on their posts in Japanese, reply to them in Japanese, and I think there's great joy to be had. I still remember when I wrote my first big or like a long message email to KG. It was all in Japanese. I'm sure he read it and he was laughing because I mean, I was just at like lesson maybe 14 and I was just in my first year, but there was this feeling of accomplishment that I know it's gonna be a long road for me. Like learning any language is not easy, and learning Japanese specifically is just extremely daunting when, like, I have a full-time job, I have Brave Wave, and like just reading about stock market. Like, I have a lot of busy areas in my life, and trying to fit learning a dense, complex language in it is not easy, but it just feels good because I see the future of this. I see me and maybe spending a month or two in Japan where I can finally like go out to dinner with KG, and maybe Alex is busy, so Alex is not with us, and us being able to have just a full night just talking about music, talking about anything else directly, because as good as Alex is, like his interpretation skills are just out of this world. He's really amazing. Yeah. It's still different when I express my feelings directly to these people, and that's what I really want. Like, even like maybe I won't end up living in Tokyo. Maybe I will live elsewhere. I mean, I one of my goals is to migrate to another country, which is like one of the larger reasons that are driving me to invest and to try and grow my money. But maybe it's not going to be Tokyo. Maybe 15-20 years from now I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to choose a different country, but the reason that I want to learn the language is not because I'm eventually going to move there. It's just because I have a lot of Japanese friends that I just want to speak to them directly and just have full nights with them and just like engage directly without just without walls of interpretation. I just want to just talk to them the way that I talk to you now. And I know that getting to the point where I can speak in Japanese the way that I'm speaking in English now is not going to be easy, but I'm willing to climb that wall, and I hope that eventually I'm gonna move from just commenting on their Facebook and Instagram posts to understand some of what they say in our dinners, to hopefully with time just be able to engage with them directly, and I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, awesome. Fingers crossed, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you one time, and seeing it everything worked out.
Me too. Hopefully not far from now. Hopefully by sometime early next year, the world can at least start traveling again. I mean, I know that some people are traveling now. I just I want to wait until I have my 2 doses of the vaccine, and honestly, I just want to save more money for travel. But hopefully next year we can just go back to something that resembles 2019 in terms of just, I want to travel to your country, let's meet up and just go and have a coffee and spend a full day together. That is something that I really miss, and I haven't been able to do that for over a year. But hopefully the end is near.
Yeah, and meanwhile we'll still have these kinds of conversations, and I'm sure if we had to press this conversation onto vinyls, it would take many records. But I'm still happy for this. Such a great conversation. Thank you for coming onto the show.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the plugs and social media. Is there anything you want to plug right now, and where can people follow you?
You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter at Robokick, ROBOKICK, and if you want to listen to any of our albums, you can go to store.bravewave.net. And if I can give just one album recommendation, if after hearing all of this you want the one album that I consider the best album that I directed, it's The Retroactive Experience by Keiji Yamagishi. He's one of my all-time favorite composers. He's the reason that I created the label in the first place, and he went from being unknown to composing music for games again after a hiatus, and he went from quitting music to making his own solo album, which is this one, The Retroactive Experience, that we actually also performed live in MacFest. So the album, The Retroactive Experience, it has the full album, some remixes by awesome video game composers, and also the live show, and that will remain my favorite Brave Wave product to date. It represents everything that I've been working towards.
That's awesome. Yeah, everybody should give this a listen. And what you should all do: close now Spotify or Apple Podcasts and check out the album right now wherever you want, through Bandcamp or Spotify or whatever places you can find access to it. And please enjoy the album. And if you like the show and you wanna follow along, you can give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, but also follow us on Spotify or whatever platform you choose. And for social media, I am at Dorian Chow on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to follow the show on Twitter or Instagram, it's Yumi Industry. And we're also on Facebook, and you can comment there, give us any ratings, give us any advice you want to. And I'm always open to listening to your feedback. And hope you had a great show. I really had a great conversation with Mohammed here. And see everyone in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. And that's just it. Bye.